Welcome, and thank you very much for joining. My name is John Antos. I lead both our strategy function and our marketing function for ADP across the Asia-Pacific region. And I have what I think is a terrific panel today. In our pre-sessions, we've been having rousing discussions, and what we really want to do is make it interactive. And we'd put out a set of 3 poll questions that we felt provided a point of view for you to share with us to include, and then at the end, see how your poll results have changed. So if we could put up the 3 questions now, one at a time, and see what you've thought so far. So very good. So just a very brief introduction, because I wanted all of our distinguished panel to spend most of the time sharing with you their perspectives. As just brief introduction, intelligent technology is really a broad term. Could be anything in the HR realm in terms of wellness programs. It could be biotech sensors, could be data analytics, it could be AI, and you've heard all of it over the last day and a half that could mean any of these different things. So what we wanted to do is really kind of take 3 approaches to how we think about intelligent technology. And the first is really around kind of what technologies are valuable in the employee life cycle as you think about what's really working for your company and sharing here. The second is around really productivity, which has always been especially a key element for HR to manage, but now intelligent technologies, the ability to bring analytics to the fore, really raise that bar even more significantly. And lastly, the question of this opportunity and both challenge that HR faces itself in as the center of change management, but also having to change itself to adapt to these technologies and how we think about that. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and give a start here to our panel. So good afternoon, gentlemen, and we'll start here. The first question, just to pitch out, when we think about, and you go out here in the hall, you take a look at a lot of the different product vendors, people that you have to work with for technology, what do you see the technologies that are either giving you a competitive edge, are driving better results at your organization through ROI? But really think about that in the lens of how you might apply them. So there's technologies that you could apply at the beginning of an employee life cycle, where to find the best talent, the gold nuggets in the sand. You may have employee populations that are existing, and as you're adapting to change, reskilling, upskilling, changing your current organization and using intelligent technologies to make that happen more effectively. Or potentially post, after maybe you've had a loss or retention, where you analyze your process and you try to bring forward a new process to kind of reinvigorate or reestablish a better process through your organization. So as Rajan, as we start with it, where do you see deploying technology? What's the most valuable part of the life cycle for you?
Anyway, very good afternoon to everybody. Thank you, John. In fact, I will try to focus on oil sector to start with, and the way we do our business and where do we see technology. I'll try to pick up from what the previous speaker was talking on, and technologies. See, we are in an organization in which we believe in high touch, and we want that high tech should be facilitating us in such a way that we have high touch. And this is not only internal, it's also external, because we are one company where we have almost everybody in this country as our customer. So that's the customer base that we have. So with that in mind, we want that high tech should be facilitating our high touch work, which we will be carrying out. To start with, this use of technology has already come in case of retention, in case of the people, in case of upskilling, in case of enabling our people to get more knowledge, more updated, whatever is happening. Because as we know that technology is changing every day, every moment, every second. And we have artificial intelligence, we are now talking of blockchain, we are talking of robots, we are talking of chatbots, and all those things are coming up, and it is changing every day. And unless you are ready for the future, it's very difficult. And to be ready for that, you have to be upgraded, and it's more important for us, I feel very strongly, that instead of focusing on acquisition, we would like to more focus on enabling our people in retention, during retention, and during their course of action. So that's where I'm looking at, my company is looking at enabling our people and using technology more in that direction.
Okay.
Hey John, I heard Rajesh talk of this about investing more in the retention space. I have a slightly counter opinion or a different line of thought. While we would like to leverage intelligent technologies through the entire employee life cycle, I feel, and in my last many years that I've spent in IT industry, and my views are more representative of that space, I feel that there is a disproportionate bias and physical investment in the acquisition space, the acquisition and onboarding space. I think the reason is because there are short-term results that organizations need to kind of report. There is a quarter-on-quarter phenomenon that organizations and CEOs need to kind of manage. And in that sense, getting people through the door becomes very important. Opportunity lost is absolutely unpardonable. And therefore you need to walk people through the doors, for which you need to tap into as much technology as is available in the market to shorten your hiring cycles, whether it is sourcing, whether it is screening, whether it is profiling, whether it is testing, whether it is onboarding. How soon can I catch the imagination of a potential candidate, and how secure I have that person as he or she enters through the doors becomes a very, very high return on investment project for me. Yeah. And therefore I believe that organizations tend to kind of do a disproportionate investment in the early part. And the next piece that comes in is obviously skill development. I think that's something that organizations cannot shy away from, because rate of change of technology, which kind of makes it contingent on people to upskill themselves. I think mapping their skills to potential opportunities and the run of it. But between these two, I think it is almost like, my guess would be 60 to 70% of the investment will be taken in this.
So, but as an HR leader, it sounds like you're making your big investments, because these are all costly systems. You can't buy everything in the same year, and your organization wouldn't be able to absorb the change of putting in everything in the same year. So for your case at Indian Oil, it's really investing in the middle of the structure. For your case though, Arun, it's really investing at the beginning to try to bring in the talent.
Yes, and I would think, and I'm making a bold statement here. I look forward to George, who's a HR technology expert. I think what organizations are doing is that they invest in some core technologies, which is a larger life cycle investment. And when I did talk about these early life cycle investments, I think these are plugins, pieces that kind of cater to these gaps that exist in these larger systems, and organizations and technical experts like George work towards integrating all of this. Yep. So that's what I believe. But George.
Thank you, Arun, and thanks, John, for kicking us off. What differentiates me from this group is these esteemed gentlemen would be my customer in the organization. So bear with me as I walk through what my experiences are. So in my mind, I think the first thing that sticks out is that HR must understand and embrace the human side of HR tech. And it's very important that you place the end user or consumer at the center of the universe. And what tends to happen is that we kind of get lost in the buzzwords, and we do not end up connecting it to measurable business outcomes. Now in the context of, I think both Arun alluded to the industry, at least that a few of us are in, very volatile industry, skills in high demand, low shelf life. So among the plethora of intelligent technologies and their applications. My experience speaks to the application in the talent supply chain and acquisition area being really, at delivering the highest competitive value for organizations today. I think traditionally talent acquisition systems have been, kind of bogged down by, they've been fairly old school, bogged down by, regular workflows and compliance. But today, these systems are being complemented by the ability to recognize and address the white spaces related to each different persona that gets involved in the talent acquisition process. So those personas, of course, being the candidate or the applicant to your organization, the hiring manager, and of course the recruiter. And the fact is, today, to drive the level of personalization that is required in the war for talent, it's kind of important how you engage that candidate with a very, very personalized experience. Some of these technologies actually actively facilitate that, take them through the process of focused branding, matching jobs to their profiles, reducing the time to apply, the time to engage during onboarding. All of that makes kind of for a white glove treatment for a candidate, and that's what organizations, of course, aspire to facilitate for their incoming talent. For hiring managers, of course, it's how do you kind of industrialize that process, reduce the time that they spend, make it a lot more predictable for them, and allow them to take decisions very quickly, assist them with assessments and tools which will allow you to onboard talent meaningfully. Of course, for the recruiter, if all of these metrics are meaningfully impacted, it means that the recruiter gets to wear the sales hat to engage the talent pool out there. So at least in my mind, talent acquisition and deployment related areas are benefiting from some of these intelligent technologies.
So the gold is at the front of the life cycle, as opposed to trying to mine it later on and bring it back.
Yeah. So this is the best part. When you sit this side where I'm sitting, everyone has covered what they're supposed to say, right? But having said that, I have a different spin to it. I'll put a different spin to this. And I think as we look at technologies to be invested on from HR perspective, I think there are different horses for different courses. And what I mean by that is that it should be thought of first putting a business challenge that we want to solve for. So I will not say that for every company, recruiting is the only or the first technology to invest on. So it may not be that. So it need not be that always. So while there are a lot of stalls outside and products selling mostly from hiring and recruiting, but that may not be the solution for every company. So example, if I talk about Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, which is one of the largest tech companies in the world, we realized that one of the key areas that we need to put technology in is in learning and development. Because we wanted to create a learning environment, we wanted to create an agile learning environment, we wanted people to learn on the go, and because if you don't abreast to that, how do you learn? How do you support your customers? So we kind of invested there heavily, and we're doing a lot of work on that. So that's my 2 bits on it, that it's based on the business challenge that you have.
Yeah.
I think I would like to just add on to that. Yeah, definitely there is not a fixed answer to that where you should be focusing on. I mean, what I just wanted to take on from what Raman has told, you have to take a very calculated call how you are going to focus on. And not that, suppose I'm again going back to my company, suppose when we are going back to, we do spend a lot, or we do have technological interventions for the recruits. For the acquisition also we do a lot of things. But at the same time, we feel very strongly, because the technology, it may not have been so required earlier, but the way technology is changing every day, that whomever you take, I think we were discussing offline beforehand, that they might become obsolete very soon. And so how do you make your people adaptable and learn this new technology. So that's why we do like to invest again and again. I was speaking about one program that we have started, like in Hindi we call it SHRM, that is enabling. And in this program we have identified a few areas where we can concentrate on, and we expose our people to that. So with that, we are trying to make them updated with technology as well as with the parameters that they should be into working, delivering. Again, productivity also will take a, I think you are ready to come on to that question right now.
And any other thoughts?
No, I just wanted to say, and I'm going to be quoting all of us anecdotally here. Now, if you are often going out for your coffee break and walking through these aisles, look at the number of stalls that are out there. And if you were to categorize them, and let's assume you had an Excel workbook in front of you, and you were to say early employment life cycle app, mid-employee life cycle app, and end employee life cycle app, you categorize each of these stalls in that and see where the proliferation is. It will be disproportionately towards one side. And in that, I would say that if you were not looking just at talent acquisition, but if you were to broaden that word to talent fulfillment, then I think hands down it will kind of be the place where organizations would want to make their investments, because skill upgradation and reskilling also becomes a part of that along with internal fulfillment. So I think while there would be organizational contexts, the current life cycle the organization itself finds itself in, I think these will dictate the investment decisions. But if you were to kind of stereotype and give a 30,000 feet pitch, I think talent fulfillment will find the maximum investment in terms of intelligent technology.
Yeah.
That's my view.
It's an interesting view, because some people would say that all the our current education system, where we do most of our education at the beginning of our lives, and then after that we just work until we retire. The world is changing so fast, and all of us, from people on this stage to new workers, are going to have to adapt at such a rate to new technologies that don't exist today, that there's almost this sense that you would have to do continual learning at some rate to continue to be able to adapt. And so this is where I was thinking these mid-cycle technologies may actually be the best place for really intelligent, how do we approach problems, how do we really upskill. So it's interesting to hear that still everybody's really focused that if we bring in the right people to start out with, we're maybe ahead of the game. Is that a fair assessment of most of where we're at if we broaden it out?
No, I don't think the initial discussion would lead to that inference necessarily, because the right kind of people are for the situation that exists today.
Yes.
Okay, and we necessarily need to find vehicles of skill upgradation. So I don't think we have so getting the right people in today is very contextual. Okay. So you're right in terms of having those intelligent technologies that help people upskill. Okay, providing those opportunities in the right size, right flavor, right context. I don't think that's any organization can shy away from that, because a person who's a rock star today could end up being a talent drag tomorrow if that doesn't fit your organizational purpose. So I think we need to be careful in terms of kind of segregating those two.
Yeah, and I think I just want to add to that. I think the scenario that you laid out, right, is nothing new. If you rewind, if you go back and into 20 years in the past, right, the same scenario existed. But what is really changing in our environment today is the kind of workforce that we have. And what I mean by that, a distributed workforce, a floating workforce, a workforce which is spanning across different time zones. So that is to really lead to that, to cater to that kind of an audience is where this whole, Technologic comes in and kind of does it. So I think the pedagogy hasn't changed. The way to deliver it has changed. Is going to change. You're going to change even more because you're going to look at people who are going to come and work for you for 2 months and go off, right? You're going to look at people you're going to bring in from another part of the world to work with another part of the world to get to a product. So that's why it's important. I think that's the key driver that is coming.
Yeah. So as you think about productivity in your organization, so HR is obviously tasked with with helping to deliver that for the business. Business would set that out, whether it's bringing in the right people, upskilling, all the different programs that HR would manage throughout the life cycle to help the organization be successful and meet its business goals. How do you see your investments in intelligent technology being absorbed? What are some of the things that you're doing in your organization to help, as you bring in a new tool, to help the organization absorb that, to get the benefit back out and to achieve those productivity gains?
That's why I always have tech guys on the right of me, right? So that's why he's sitting where he's sitting. But having said that, I think, going back to the first point which I made, right? I think, if you look at why business exists to make profits. How do you make profits? One of the levers is productivity. So that has been there for some time. So that's why whichever technology we want to put into place has to have that business impact very clearly articulated. We often see, and I will let George comment on that. I hope he doesn't say too many good things about it. But the point is, you'll often see people want to put a technology for the sake of a technology. I go to a forum like this, I see a technology which is cool, I want to get it back into my company immediately. And it is affordable, you can get it off. But then, what is the business impact? How do I drive that business results is often not articulated. And clearly, productivity is key to it. So I don't think we can do something just because someone else is doing it and it's cool. But I think a lot of time has been spent on working on the productivity. So I don't think in Hewlett-Packard Enterprise we do not invest on a technology unless we've been able to articulate what the productivity we want to drive out of it. Or the business impact. I will not say productivity, I'll say business impact we want to drive out of it. Is it going to up sales, lower complaints, improve customer sat scores or whatever, but that has to be clearly articulated before we get into it.
Before you come from a technology perspective, I'll speak whatever is left of him. Okay, because he pointed to the right, I point to the left. I think purely from an investment in terms of productivity enhancement, I think we are seeing a lot of investments in collaboration tools. It's a takeoff exactly on the kind of talent models and project delivery methodologies that organizations are adopting. They're becoming more tolerant of distributed workforces, which necessarily means that you don't leak effort, for which the backbone then becomes collaborative technologies. Whether it is using, just to pick, and I'm not a technology expert, I look towards you for that, but things like you would find more incidences of SharePoint today than you ever found. You will find things graduating to telepresence. Any organization which has the affordability index high would be wanting to have more and more telepresence available as infrastructure availability, primarily because that creates a more realistic team environment, even though the work is spread out. And these are just two illustrations where there is a direct business impact and a business need, and hence investments would be there.
I think George will have the last word in this. So before that, I will also try to. But one more thing. I just thought I'll see. As far as HR is concerned, as far as HR fraternity is concerned, productivity do play a big role. I think we have been all this time we have been playing a facilitating role, but we ourselves have to be also chief productive officers. I mean, that is how we have to reposition ourselves. Because finally, at the end of the day, through your people, through your group, you are going to create an environment for the entire organization in such a way that it becomes productive. So that role needs to be played internally. Always we have been more or less focused on executing things or advising others to do things. But at this point of time, yes, we look at it that we also have to internally do it. And that's where I feel also that this productivity has got a big role to play in our area as well. And where technology can butt in. I think George will have the last word in this. So before that, I will also try to butt in. One more thing. I just thought I'll see. As far as HR is concerned, as far as HR fraternity is concerned, productivity do play a big role. I think we have been all this time we have been playing a facilitating role, but we ourselves have to be also chief productive officers. I mean, that is how we have to reposition ourselves. Because finally, at the end of the day, through your people, through your group, you are going to create an environment for the entire organization in such a way that it becomes productive. So that role needs to be played internally. Always we have been more or less focused on executing things or advising others to do things. But at this point of time, yes, we look at it that we also have to internally do it. And that's where I feel also that this productivity has got a big role to play in our area as well. And where technology can butt in. In fact, we have to utilize technology in such a way that it creates those dashboards, or it creates those facilitators for us so that we make it possible. I think off to George.
Thank you, Ranjan. In my view, intelligent technologies today firmly support the progression of what we've seen as systems of record to engagement and now systems of productivity. So what they say is, pick up technology if it's really fit for purpose and if it really makes the life of the user more meaningful in the work that they deliver. Now productivity is, of course, in the context of work, extends in today's distributed workforce to include communication, collaboration, creativity, critical thinking, consumption of information. So in that context, I think what's happening today is that while we see a lot of intelligent technology is getting deployed, products out there that look to deliver that higher order productivity, the reality is that the rate of growth of productivity of the workforce, I read in a recent research, is at its lowest rate in the last 2 decades. So if anything, the infusion of this technology is not necessarily delivering productivity in the way that we think it does, right? So I think the jury is still out in terms of what it can deliver. And probably 50% of the workforce, when surveyed, would probably say that they cannot connect their productivity to the technology that's deployed. In my mind, I think there are kind of 2 places I would think of in terms of baselining productivity, and that's when you look at productivity, it's really kind of looking at 2 sides of that coin. One is the function who aspires to deploy the technology, and the other side of the coin is the actual employee or the manager who benefits from that technology. So knowing your personas and knowing what it means to them, defining that very clearly. Also defining the sources and the metrics for measuring that productivity, attempting to create a view of that while you're at the stage of a business case for deploying the technology would be a good step. We're trying to kind of do that so that we're very conscious of what are those elements of productivity that you're trying to impact. And that kind of forms that aspirational goal against which you try to deploy. Now in most cases, whether that goal is met or not also is predicated on change management, and how it gets adopted. But the reality is that if you tee up that functional leadership, sponsorship, and try to incorporate that commitment on productivity to, let's say, a critical program review, I think there is a grounds for pursuing an improvement in productivity. So that's my take on that, John.
Yeah, it's interesting because it really creates essentially the bringing in of technology. Not sure if it increases productivity, the need to do so many things in the organization. And I think it puts HR in a very unique spot. When I think about the different functions, so whether it's a strategy function, marketing function, I'm an implementer of technology to try to improve or become more efficient. But I'm kind of at the end. HR would be trying to implement for the organization, the vision itself, larger technology, things that impact every single employee. But at the same time, as you keep bringing things in, your own team has to somehow change and grow around new technologies. You may have to make some of the same decisions that people in functions like myself would make about how do we reskill, do we bring in new people, and what's the right answer within your own organization. So it's a question of being directive outwardly to your organization, but being inwardly introspective as an HR professional about what do I need to personally grow and adapt and get ready. And so I'm wondering how your thoughts on that and how you are working on that on your teams.
The first question, first advice has been that charity begins at home. So whatever we were trying to teach, we must practice that as well. So this is number one. Number two, one more thing, I'm just taking on from you, that whatever technological interventions are happening across the company, I was telling that Indian Oil is not a company, it's a company of companies, because we have refining, we have transporting, we have marketing, different, and everybody is doing different activities. But whatever intervention is happening at that place, what we feel the group has to drive that. Even if it is a predictive maintenance in my pump house or in some technological areas, in my column or wherever it is happening, this needs to be also driven by my HR group. This needs to be told to them or projected to them in a different way, that finally all these activities which are happening at basis are adding up to productivity. So this is what I have been advising, and I am sure that this is going to take us a step further, to give us good results. Yeah.
So, let me add to that. I think, John, this is one of the key things that's keeping me awake at night. Okay, is this whole skill transformation, not only for the company but for HR itself, right? So, as you look at the HR function today, which exists in large corporations in India, they basically have been wearing hats which has been more execution focused. Okay. So here is an engagement program, let's go and drive it, let's do it well. Here is a retention program, let's do it well and let's go it. So with small design, large execution. That has happened. And most of this design and execution has happened on a reactive mode. What I mean is that we have a spike in attrition, so let's look at it after do and so on and so forth. Now, as the technology kicks in, we will be given with a lot of predictive data, information. So I think the key skill sets that we will need is to read the data, understand the data, and more of data analyst and data scientist kind of a input we need, which is not on any JD of any HR person anywhere in the country. Or it is not even in the curriculum of the HR schools today. So there is going to be a big gap in that. And that is something that I think all of us as a fraternity need to focus on, see what we're going to do. And I think that's a key area. And that's a key topic to discuss going forward.
Big challenge.
Yeah.
I'd like to build on short on battery. I think I want to come from two angles to this. I'm just going to build more on what Raman just said. I think first, we need to understand that what brought us here is not going to get us there. In terms of the competence, the critical success factors that are driving the HR professionals in organizations, I think they're going to change very, very drastically. People who credited all their success to execution without taking anything away from that mantra, I think they're going to find it very difficult to kind of sustain and secure their positions in organizations, because a lot of execution is going to get enabled by intelligent technologies, which basically means that HR professionals need to kind of upskill themselves to a different level, okay, and do things which he used the word proactive, I would add consultative, advisory. So the list could go on to actually understand the business, which will now become a very, very essential prereq. Okay, that's one part of it. So there is a change management internally. And the second thing that I wanted to say is that it is important for them to be able to align with businesses to drive the change on the floor, because whether we like it or not, one of the elements of the job description of an HR person is being a change agent, right? And anything that impacts people, this community kind of gets involved. And it is very important to be on top of the game if they want to be facilitative in this.
Check. So this is an interesting topic because I was reading a quote recently which said, "What stands in between organizations and the deployment of intelligent technologies is the threat of change management and the overbearing nature of that." And the quote was, "To AI or not to AI." And you know, when taking a decision to kind of plunge into the deep end of that pool, it's important for meaningful deployment and sustenance of that technology, that you organize a fairly diverse group that will allow you to make that deployment successful. In today's context, organizations sometimes may have those skills internally, or they may loan those skills from outside the organization in the form of consulting partners. But for today's technology to sustain at an enterprise level, it's important that you incorporate skill sets like experienced designers, deep tech and integration specialists, organizational change consultants, functional SMEs. And this group jointly takes accountability for taking that program to the other shore, so to speak. So the readiness of the organization to invest in such a diverse team and beg, borrow, steal while doing that, kind of bake that into the whole program design is, in my mind, one of the key aspects. And what HR, taking off what Arun said, what HR can do is, meanwhile, because these skills probably don't exist today, and I'm sure you're going to bring up the poll which talks about evolution of HR skills in organizations, is to build some of that capability natively, in the long run. So while you co-opt capability in the short run, by the means that I said, but it's to invest up ahead and try to, bring in such skills into the organization. So there is a certain sense of inevitable evolution there that's required of the function.
So you see it essentially, just briefly, as we're running a little short of time, but is it fair to say that each one of you see this as the opportunity for HR if they choose to grab it?
Absolutely, that's also true. This is an opportunity which has been given, and we have to grab it, and we have to really make it ongoing things for future as well. I mean, we just don't have to leave it in between. So that's what we do see as opportunity.
I am sensitive to time, but I did want to make this statement that when I was growing up in the industry, it was very natural for HR leaders to say, "Don't talk to me about technology." Then we got the smarter set of people who were not conversant with technology, but were smart enough to align technology smart guys with them. But I think the future is about people who understand, appreciate, and speak technology.
Interesting.
And this is an opportunity that you can't let go. That way I'm lucky, I'm almost at the fag end of my career, but for several others in this room, I think it is very important that they become conversant and comfortable with technology.
An opportunity?
No, I think I was trying to say, what I try to add on to this, I think all very nicely summarized is, I think HR will have to now start looking outside their own teams to see what skills they need to grow. Because it's fantastic that now in HR we have a team called Tech HR. Okay, and we are doing a seminar called Tech HR, which is like way forward. But I think the HR folks owe it to themselves to step out and understand what's happening in technology, what's happening in finance, what is driving business results. We still tend to be shy of that. And that's something will not make this, the fraternity survive if we don't understand the linkages. And it's now even more critical.
Yeah. And so on that note, a terrific segue. Let's see what HR thinks. If we could put up the poll responses that we had for our 3 questions and share with the audience. I think the polls are still open, so if the discussion has influenced you one way or another, be sure to go ahead and put in your vote. Could we have the poll questions up on the screen, please? Okay, so on this first one around intelligent acquisition, oops, sorry about that. Kind of hooked up here. We see that talent engagement is so kind of middle of the stage. This was our kind of life cycle question, and so talent engagement as the most significant place, talent acquisition at the front, learning and development. So again, goes to what the panel was saying in terms of combining that kind of front of and the early kind of mid stage. The next question, if we could have a quick look. So this is the confidence level of each of everybody with all these technologies out there. How confident are each one of us that we can actually take a look and that actually manage and work with these? And it's interesting because as the technologies become more complicated, we see about people maybe 50% confident with the different things that are coming out. So obviously opportunity, some ability to drive change, but some opportunity to continue learning about new technologies as they come forward. And the last question. So this one here around HR, having this opportunity to really both be the change agent for the organization, but also understand that they need to kind of change themselves. And so what is the new job role that you would add to your HR team to essentially help drive this change into the future that the panel talked about? And we see here that the HR innovator integrator to kind of integrate some of the new innovations, as well as a proponent for technologies, would be key to have on the HR team going forward to really make a difference. So with all that, I'd like to really thank our panel. It's a terrific discussion, very enjoyable. I'd like to thank our audience for participating virtually. Thanks very much. Terrific day.